I think this is the end of American empire. The thing about war that people don't appreciate, because it's been a long time since we fought a real war, is that war makes people crazy. COVID taught the elite not only that people can be programmed to be obedient, but also how to program them. So, COVID was this massive experiment in mass political indoctrination, and they're still using the same playbook today. And you're right. Why aren't we protesting this war in Iran? Why aren't we protesting what Israel is doing in Lebanon? Why aren't we protesting the fact that Israel seems to be targeting everyone? Why hasn't anyone protested the fact that America, at the first day of the war, killed the leader of Iran, which is against international law, and also killed 168 innocent schoolgirls? Why aren't there any protests against that? So all this is really weird.
At the moment, tensions in Iran have escalated into an active conflict, with ongoing airstrikes and military responses across the region. Civilians have been affected by the violence, and the situation remains serious. The Strait of Hormuz has been largely restricted, disrupting a major portion of global oil shipments and pushing energy prices higher. As a result, the economic impact is beginning to be felt internationally, including in the United States. Most people are following the conflict, but very few are actually following why this is happening. Professor Jiang is not a credentialed academic. He teaches at a high school. He says that himself every single lecture. But for the past 2 years, he has been mapping exactly how this conflict would unfold, the strategy, the timeline, the players, and the endgame. And so far, he has been right about almost all of it. And no, this is not a recap of his predictions. This is his analysis of what is actually driving this war, who benefits from the division around it, and why the fact that you are watching this video right now may itself be part of the plan.
I think this is the end of American empire. The thing about war that people don't appreciate, because it's been a long time since we fought a real war, is that war makes people crazy, right? It's like if you're in a fight, and maybe you didn't mean to get in the fight, and maybe in the beginning, the fight was over the pettiest things. And the observers think, oh, well, they just argue and push each other and then punch each other, but then this thing will stop. But once you're in a fight, the adrenaline takes over, right? And you just want to win no matter what. And you can do anything to win. So what's happening is that the American military, maybe they were not in for this war, but now that they're in this war, they want to win this war at all costs. And you look at a guy like Peter Hegseth. Whenever he does a press conference, I swear to God, it's almost like he talks war as though he's having an orgasm. I mean, do you get that impression where he just loves this, right?
Yeah.
When he says negotiating with bombs, it's like he's climaxing.
Yeah.
It's
sick.
These people are insane. Yeah. And I think that's what war does to people. You go to World War I, where, for years they were throwing millions of people to their deaths in the trenches. They were ordering millions of men to go run into machine gun fire. And then you're like, why would they do that? That's irrational. But you have to understand, war makes people crazy. So as this thing progresses, you're going to see more craziness, more madness on the part of Trump and Hegseth. I mean, Hegseth loves this thing, and then Trump doesn't want to lose face, right? He fears. I mean, the thing he fears most is humiliation, being called a clown, being called incompetent. He's a very insecure man. So I think that they're definitely going to bomb power plants, and they are going to definitely bomb desalination plants. And they're definitely going to send in ground troops. This thing will just escalate and escalate. And the problem is that as this becomes much more crazy, as this becomes much more mad, the American people will become much more desensitized to this madness. And eventually things will become much more normalized until America finds itself in total war. Two years ago, when I was posting my lectures to YouTube, I said there'll be 3 major reasons for a U.S. invasion of Iran. And the three reasons were, number one, Christian Zionism, the evangelicals in America. Second was Saudi Arabia. And the third is hubris, empire, right? So for me, Israel is not a factor, a larger factor as people assume it to be. I think the Christian Zionists are a much larger problem.
I agree.
And so for them, this war in the Middle East is the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, meaning that this will eventually culminate with the second coming and the return of Jesus and the rapture. And so if they can provoke events in a certain way, then it will cause a domino effect, a chain reaction, which will lead to the end of the world, right? And so the certain conditions that they have to meet is, one is a war in the Middle East, which is happening right now. Second is the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the building of the third temple. This will happen, I think, within the next 2 years. It will happen very, very soon. And I think it's going to shock people. If you don't believe that this war is eschatological or religious in any way, when the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed, I guarantee you will start to believe this is a religious war. Anti-Semitism is actually a very important part of the puzzle as well, because they need the Jewish diaspora to return to Israel. And then you have the Jewish Messiah, the coming of the Jewish Messiah. And then you have the war of Gog and Magog. Okay, so you have these. You need to have these different elements in place. So it seems as though there's a script in place, and there are fundamentalists, just crazy religious extremists and you know they occupy different countries, right? So you have these Zionists in Israel, but then you have the Christian Zionists in America. And they're all working towards the same goal.
Jiang's core argument about this war starts with three causes: not Israel, not Iran, and not oil. He says the real drivers are Christian Zionism, Saudi Arabia, and what he calls hubris empire, the psychological compulsion of a declining superpower to assert dominance even when it makes no strategic sense. That framing is uncomfortable for people on both sides of the debate. The left does not want to hear that Israel is not the primary driver. The right does not want to hear that America's empire is in freefall. But Jiang does not care about that. Instead, he goes where the analysis leads.
And I don't think people, especially young people, appreciate the appeal of this eschatology. It's almost like a drug, because it's a way to structure your life and give it meaning and purpose, right? You're just trying to achieve one goal, and it's a script. So all you have to do is play your part. You know, speak one or two lines in the script, and the script will move automatically, naturally, almost divinely, towards the end of the world and the coming return of Jesus. And people don't appreciate how powerful this movement is, because if you look at the stats, okay, about a quarter, 1/4 of Americans are evangelicals, okay? Most are not Christian Zionists, so maybe about 10% are Christian Zionists. But then you're talking about, like, at least in America, 10 to 20, 30 million people who are Christian Zionists. Okay, that's a lot of people, because remember, not only do they believe this stuff, but they're actively contributing and acting towards achieving this vision, which means that they're donating money to this cause. So there's a pastor named John Hagee, Hagee, and he runs an organization called Christians United for Israel. It's about 7 million people. They have 7 million people in this group. And what they specialize in is raising funds to fund West Bank settlement. Okay, so these are the people driving a lot of the conflict in the Middle East, because they want the Jews to return to Israel, which would initiate a chain of events that would lead to the return of Jesus. So they do fundraising, but also they will also work for the government. They'll lobby politicians. If you speak out against Israel, these people will call you up every single day and batter you, and they'll go to the office and protest you. Okay, so these people, they may not have that much money, but they certainly are willing to work their ass off in order to achieve their vision, and they're united, and they have the same purpose. And then you combine this with AIPAC money, right? The AIPAC people and all these Jewish Zionist billionaire money, and they become like an unstoppable political force in America. Many years ago, this Texas farmer, he bred perfect red heifers, right? And then it cost him millions of dollars to breed perfect red heifers. And you need them as a sacrifice to consecrate the grounds for the building of the third temple. And then he flew them to Israel. And so now there's like, they're all in Israel, they're all perfect. They're all ready to be sacrificed when the time is appropriate. Okay, that's number one. Number two is that there's organization in Israel called the Temple Institute. The Temple Institute, they have a website. And what they've done is they have already built brick by brick the third temple. Okay, so the third temple is already built. And all they have to do is move it into position when the Dome of the Rock is destroyed, because the Dome of the Rock is where the third temple has to be. That's number two. Number three is, for the past few years, they've been conducting archaeological digs under the Al-Aqsa complex. Now, why would you do that? And the answer is, well, because you plan to plant bombs to do a controlled demolition. Last June, there was a prominent Israeli rabbi who told his followers, oh my God, this war, this 12-day war, it was a perfect opportunity to do a false flag, where we pretend an Iranian missile hits the Al-Aqsa Mosque, we blow it up in a controlled demolition, and then the Persians and the Arabs, because they're animals, start killing each other, and then we have peace in the Middle East, right? So it seems as though all the ingredients are in place, all the elements are in place. And what I think they're waiting for is this. What I think they're waiting for is global economic collapse. And this could happen in the next 6 months, right? When East Asia is completely out of oil, and you have total lockdowns like COVID, where in Africa people are starving because they don't have fertilizer anymore. In the United States, people are rioting because of inflation, because of the national draft, whatever. But when the entire world is chaos, no one's going to notice the Al-Aqsa Mosque has been destroyed, right? And I think they're waiting for that. They're very patient. They're very methodical. I think we will see this happen, all this play out in the next year or two.
Now, here is the part of Jiang's analysis that most people are not talking about. He believes he is being amplified massively across social media without what he considers an organic reason for it. Millions of views, major media appearances, and a sudden rise that he himself finds suspicious. And instead of celebrating it, he is asking a question that almost no one in his position would ask. Why is the system allowing this to even happen?
I think that what's happening now is very different from what happened during COVID, right? Because remember, in the first few weeks of COVID, there was huge suspicion that this was a lab leak. And there were a lot of criticisms that these lockdowns won't work and we shouldn't trust the vaccines. And there's a massive campaign to censor anyone and everyone who raised any questions about COVID.
That's why I was banned on YouTube, for that reason.
Right. And today, we're seeing the complete opposite, where very prominent influencers, such as yourself, such as Tucker Carlson, are given huge microphones and are allowed to say whatever they want against this war. You have a lot of Americans who are now rooting for Iran because they understand how unjust this war is. I'm being amplified throughout social media. I don't think it's organic. I think like I'm being amplified and given more prominence than I should be. And so the question is, why is this happening? And one suspicion I have is that this sort of social dissent, this social division, is also part of the playbook. Because if this war is meant to move towards the end of the world and the Great Reset, then you need civil war throughout the Western world, right? You need civil war in America, you need civil war in Europe. And what better way to foment civil war than have people argue all the time on social media? What better way than to show people that this war is pointless, it's unwinnable, and just sow apathy and discontent in the American mind. If you look at Epstein's emails, one thing that he was very obsessed with is family heritage, where he was having a conversation with Arende de Rothschild, who was a member of the Rothschild family. And one thing that he told her is, look, there were three families that were very powerful in Europe, Jewish banking families. They were the Rothschilds, the Epsteins, and the Gutmans. And we built a shelter, and Hitler lived in the shelter for a long time. And he was obsessed with this heritage of his, proving to himself and to others that the Epsteins is one of the most powerful families in the world. They're part of the Illuminati. They're up there with the Rothschilds. So this is what the elite is just obsessed with, proving to themselves in the world that they're just divine, and that's why they rule. Because it's not because of their brilliance, it's not because of their ability, it's not because of their leadership skills. It's because they're divine. Their blood is just different from ours. In 2003, during the Iraq War, there were huge protests around the world against the war. There are no protests today. So you wonder how much of life today is organic.
Yeah.
How much of it is people actually expressing their views as opposed to they're being paid to protest or they're being paid to promote a certain viewpoint online. I think people don't appreciate the amount of brainwashing, indoctrination that goes on in social media, in daily life. And I think that COVID was crucial because COVID taught the elite not only that people can be programmed to be obedient, but also how to program them. So, COVID was this massive experiment in mass political indoctrination, and they're still using the same playbook today. And you're right. Why aren't we protesting this war in Iran? Why aren't we protesting what Israel is doing in Lebanon? Why aren't we protesting the fact that Israel seems to be targeting everyone? Why hasn't anyone protested the fact that America, at the first day of the war, killed the leader of Iran, which is against international law, and also killed 168 innocent schoolgirls? Why aren't there any protests against that? So all this is really weird.
Here is what Jiang is actually saying when you put it all together. This war is not just a military conflict. It is being used to accomplish several things at once: to redirect economic power, to accelerate the collapse of American global leadership. It creates conditions for religious extremists on multiple sides to advance an eschatological script that most ordinary people do not even know exists. And it requires, as part of that script, maximum social division inside Western countries. The demoralization you feel scrolling through comments, the infighting between people who should be allies, the fact that there are no large anti-war protests despite a conflict that would have brought millions into the streets, like in the Iraq War in 2003. Jiang argues none of that is accidental, it's managed. Now, you do not have to accept every piece of that. Some of it is speculative, and Jiang acknowledges that. But the pieces he grounds in documented history, Christian Zionist political organizing, the mechanics of empire decline, and the financial logic of war and reconstruction, those are real. The question is whether you are willing to look at the whole picture, because the people who benefit from this war are counting on you not to. And that is it for today. If you found this valuable, please like and subscribe. See you in our next video.